Before we begin, I just want to make it clear that today's episode, we will be discussing some heavy issues. So buckle up, or I'll talk to you Wednesday. Thank you. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man in birds and animals and creeping things. Therefore, God gave them up in the lusts of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions, for their women exchanged natural relations for those that are contrary to nature. And the men likewise gave up natural relations with women and were consumed with passion for one another, men committing shameless acts with men and receiving in themselves the due penalty for their error. And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. They were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Though they know God's decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them. Romans 1, 18 through 32. This is a Life-Given podcast. I'm Isaac Lopez. So, as many of you may know, about a week or so ago, or a couple weeks ago rather, there was this thing that came out about Wayfair that is honestly indescribable. It's pretty ugly. And the research I've done on it and just turns my stomach. It is absolutely appalling. And I think it's not really up to discussion about whether we abhor it, or is it? We'll get to that. But primarily, I just want to introduce you to a summary of Wayfairgate. Now, this video is circulating on Instagram, and I would just warn you there's some language in it, but I think that it's a better summary than what I can do, a bit more succinct of the actual, just the meat of what is going on. Here you go.
What are they talking about? They're talking about this. Before we go there, here's a history for Wayfair from last year. They had an issue where employees planned Wednesday walkout after learning they were making beds for migrant detention centers. We know where most of the kids who get trafficked are found. They're found in the detention centers. So that is a red flag right there, a bloody glove, whatever you want to call it. Darian found this. See that cabinet? Keep a note of that. Samaya cabinet. $13,000 for that cabinet. What these people do, I'll tell you in a second. Samaya is a girl that actually went missing not too long ago, just months ago, and in Ohio. What they do is when they're selling these children on these sites, they hide it, and they make astronomical prices for cheap goods, and they change the names, exactly like you're seeing here. Same cabinet, different name, different price. How's that possible? Yuritsa storage cabinet. Yuritsa is also someone, as she dug, 16-year-old girl who went missing on June 10th, 2020. This could be coincidence. but it seems a little odd.
I know your reaction is probably the same as mine. Ah, man, it's honestly there. I have dug a bit into conspiracy theories. I have some, and I have to tell you, it can be a really dark place. It can be really a place that the light does not seem to reach. Anyway, so you get a summary of Wayfairgate right there. And there seems to be strong coincidences, strong connections between the two, between the names of the cabinets, the prices of the cabinets, and then the names of those cabinets that are ridiculously high correlate or correspond to some children that have been abducted. And they're that in and of itself is very strong. It's a very strong connection. And people have been finding these not only on Wayfair, but on some other big brand, I think like Amazon and Walmart, but you need to check that out on your own. Also, before you go digging into this, just be aware that links and hashtags can get stuff onto your computer that could be, that is illegal. I myself didn't click through it because I had gotten warned about it. So just to pass that warning along to you, do be careful. So Wayfair had a spokesperson come out, and on Fox Business, there was a report. She replied to an email from Fox Business and said, as to the Wayfairgate, the accusations that were flying about the human trafficking that was happening through their sites. Susan Frenchette said, there is, of course, no truth to these claims. The products in question are industrial-grade cabinets that are accurately priced. She goes on to say, though, recognizing that the photos and descriptions provided by the supplier do not adequately explain the high price points, we have temporarily removed the products from sites to rename them and to provide a more in-depth description and photos that accurately depict the product to clarify the price point. So basically, she's just denying it. And of course, why wouldn't you deny this? And you'll find plenty of articles out there debunking this conspiracy theory, or that's what it's called. Now, how are we supposed to analyze this? Because really, it has just almost been pushed off to the side as like, oh, this isn't anything. This is just a conspiracy theory. Just forget about it. But how are Christians supposed to treat conspiracy theories? Because there are some theories out there that can be very convincing and can point to a number of things that could count as evidence. And it seems circumstantial, but also there seems to be some weight to it. So as people who should be invested in finding the truth, because we know the truth, I'm tapping my Bible right now, we know the truth. We should be interested in finding out the truth. Human trafficking is not a conspiracy theory. It is a fact. According to a September 2017, a report that came out in September 2017 from the International Labor Organization and Walk Free Foundation, it is estimated that 24.9 million victims are trapped in modern-day slavery. Of these, 16 million are exploited for labor, 4.8 million are sexually exploited, and 4.1 million are exploited in state-imposed forced labor. Human trafficking earns profits of roughly $150 billion a year for traffickers, according to the ILO report from 2014. The following is a breakdown of profits by sector. $99 billion from commercial sexual exploitation, $34 billion in construction, $9 billion in agriculture, $8 billion through private households that employ domestic workers under conditions of forced labor. Now, here is where I think this is that you can't just deny that human trafficking exists. And now I don't think anyone's trying to deny it by building to somewhere. Okay, I'm not trying to argue over this, but rather to put some statistics out there and kind of extrapolate from that. Okay, so bear with me on this. While only 19%, this is going back to the report, while only 19% of victims are trafficked for sex, sexual exploitation earns 66% of the global profits of human trafficking. So this is in a giant. It's an industry that makes billions of dollars. It is a global industry. So why would we be surprised if something like this was going on, say, on Wayfair? And people would go out of their way to protect this because people have a lot of money tied up into it. So why wouldn't we see people denying it? Why wouldn't it be surprising that people are writing this off as a conspiracy theory? I mean, if you have a lot of money staked up into something, you don't want to just throw it away, right? And we know for a fact that trafficking happens. So I wouldn't dismiss it as a conspiracy theory. Okay. I wouldn't just dismiss that. I think that if we are searching and if we are truly searching and looking for the truth, we should look into this. Blake Lively has a very emotional speech that she gave back in 2017. And she gives more detail as to the kinds of things that are being trafficked and traded. That one of those things being child pornography. And she gets into detail about that. I'll link to that in the show notes, and I'll let you explore that on your own, of your own volition. I'm not going to include it here on the show because we only have so much time. But I think it's good to hear what actually is happening, because this is the frickin' hill I am going to die on. It's been a while since we've talked about the show Model, but we're going to see a rise in trafficking. We're going to see this kind of industry continue to be a global giant and just grow if we don't say anything, if we don't do anything about it. It's ugly, it's nasty, it's a darkness that seriously needs the light of Christ. And we got to acknowledge its presence first and foremost, and we got to know what we're going up against, okay? So we talk about the slippery slope, right? We've talked about how we have gotten to this point because we have said, okay, yeah, that's not that big a deal. Because we didn't say, this is where I'm going to stand and this is the hill I'm willing to die on. We are now getting to the point where pedophilia, and actually we're a little bit past the point where pedophilia is joining the movement, is coming out and is saying we need to be recognized that the sin of pedophilia is actually in our nature and therefore cannot be or should not be fixed or should not be judged. And this is encapsulated in this TED Talk that I'm about to play for you, just a clip of it. And it came out in 2018. Okay. And there are other films and other talks out there that are trying to push pedophilia as something to be accepted. And as up until now, it was suppressed and repressed by society. But now that we are moving into further along into the Enlightenment, now that we are all enlightened and now that we know what we know because of science, this should be allowed in society. Not only allowed, but applauded. And holy cow, this sucks. I'm sick of it. This is a hill, okay? And they aren't going to move beyond it because we're not going to let them. You're not coming for our kids. Anyway, here's the clip, a TED Talk. I think it was hosted in Germany.
Pedophilia is an unchangeable sexual orientation, just like, for example, heterosexuality. No one chooses to be a pedophile. No one conceives being one. The difference between pedophilia and other sexual orientations is that living out this sexual orientation will end in a disaster.
This is unchangeable. This is part of the sexual orientation. This is the same language we've heard for the last 45 years. When are we going to actually say, no, stop it? You're splitting hairs and it's bull crap. Yes, this is the hill. They aren't coming for our kids, and that's not going to become societally acceptable. And it comes out in things like Wayfair, where people finally start to realize, oh, crap, this is actually happening. So let's take a hold of this moment and write out and see what happens. Be vocal, share things, do your own research, because they're coming for you and your kids. Man. And this has happened because we didn't say no to the first time we heard this kind of language, and that was with homosexuality. And they then were pointing to science saying, hey, there's a large group of people that feel this way, that have these tendencies. And so therefore, it must not be a sin. Man, we just got to start reading our Bibles more, folks. We got to start looking and reminding ourselves what the truth is instead of accepting the hogwash that is being tossed into our cups. So conspiracy theory or not, there's an ugly monster we got to start fighting. There are a lot of ugly monsters we got to start fighting. It just depends on where you want to go with it. And so how does a Christian handle conspiracy theories? Search for the truth. Because I think there may be more truth to this than people want to acknowledge. And it's pretty ugly. All right, so that is your episode. Thanks for bearing with me through that. It is really, I mean, this was probably one of the harder ones to film and to record because it's just not a topic that is by any stretch of the imagination something that I want to talk about, but it's necessary. I hope that you guys see that, and I think you guys do. I think it would be foolish to assume that it's not. It's just in the context of the conspiracy theory, and that's the questions that I think each of you have to figure out on your own. But do realize that this is part of a bigger picture. Let me know what you think. Email me at thelifegivenandreceived@gmail.com or the Life Giving News on Facebook or on Instagram at _TLG podcast _ or on Parler at TLG podcast. I hope you all have a good start to your week, that you're praying, that you're reading your word, reading the word, because we need a lot of that in this crazy time. Remember that the life that you have been given and the life that you have received includes every area of life. Thank the Lord. God bless.